Hey,
Hello.
what's going on?
How are you? It's been a while. Good to see you.
It has been a while. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, as good as you can be for 2020, I guess. Did we think that this would happen ever?
Okay. Ever? I don't think we have experienced anything like this. This
Definitely
has been
not.
crazy, crazy of a year. So now we finally have you. You're not cleaning today, not
Not
sweaty
cleaning.
today.
That was
There
so
we go.
great. So I'm literally yesterday I am like deep in Swifferland and my phone keeps blowing up with messages from you and I'm like, what is going on? I thought we were talking on Monday and then you thought it was Monday all day yesterday.
I did. I really thought it was Monday. I woke up and I'm like working on my computer. I'm doing things and I'm like, oh my God, it's time. And I'm like just hitting her up and I'm on live, like, oh my God, something's going wrong. And then you looked and you told me, and I'm like, oh, today's not Monday. I was like, what is wrong with me?
Like the inner scared, like never wanting to get in trouble child was like, am I not where I'm supposed to be right now? I'll get on it. I'm like all greased up. Like, I don't care. I'm covered in pledge, but we'll do it right now.
No, I appreciate you. So we are live, guys, for our my show at least called Creators Chat. I am excited to be here. I have a good friend of mine, Laura Harman, is in the building. She is a actress all the way out in the great land of California, which I sometimes I wish I was at. Sometimes I wish I was there.
You're gonna come visit when
Um,
everything settles down.
right when things settle down, it's like the moment I realize, ooh, I should get up and go. The world is like, no, no, sit home,
Yep.
sit home.
Nope. Stay home, keep grinding.
So, Laura, give me a little bit about yourself, just about your upbringing, and then kind of leading into like what got you into acting.
Well, I am a middle child. I have an older brother and a younger brother. I've been a pretty uncoordinated creative since I was very little. I started off in ballet. My mom thought that would be great, and it was good for my posture because I'm 5'11", but I had absolutely no skill set whatsoever. Like every single video that you'll see on VHS is me in the middle, like a maypole, pointing to girls who actually could do ballet and tap and jazz. So I switched into theater when I was in fifth grade. I joined a
Mm,
production of Oklahoma that I auditioned for at the Orlando Civic Theater, which really was what gave me the acting bug. I was very
okay.
fortunate. I got a fairly large role in a show full of high schoolers. And it was the moment when my parents, I think, really recognized that that was going to be something that I was going to thrive in.
Mm,
I then started competing all the way through school, and my mentor and I met. This is a good friend, Pat Skipper, who grew up with my mother. He was already a working actor in Los Angeles, and I met him when I was 12 years old, and that truly changed the trajectory of my life. He was someone who really encouraged me that I could be a professional. I could have a sweet little house with a family and be acting full time. So he took me under my wing. My dad died when I was in high school, so he kind of, in many ways, stepped into the role of a father figure, but also I think encouraged my bravery to pursue acting professionally. And then eventually, when I was 18, with the support of my mom, I moved to California.
wow,
Yeah.
so much. So I have been told, people always tell me like, "Oh, Vince, you should go into acting. You should go into comedian." I'm like, no, like just because I feel like it's so like I'm a very great. I think one of my strong suits is I'm great at improv,
Yeah.
but when you give me a long list of lines, now my brain is like, "Doo-doo-doo-tsh," you know.
Right.
So, what were some of the challenges that you came across when you like really got into acting that maybe you didn't expect that kind of blindsided you when you got in it?
Well, there are a couple things. I'll start with when I was younger. Memorization is a huge part of what we do. So
Whew.
I fortunately went to a theater magnet program, and they drilled it into us once a week. We had to memorize a huge monologue, perform it in front of our
Mm,
entire class. So you really kind of have to get over yourself in a hurry, because if you're self-conscious, you're going to
right.
shit the bed. Sorry to say it like that. You're going to get up there. It's going to be, just imagine, like, most people who have terrible stage fright, like, you know pretty quickly if you're meant to be an actor or not, because you either thrive under the
Mm-hmm.
pressure, or when something like an environment like this isn't stressful, you're in the right
Yep.
lane. Something like this puts you into a tailspin of anxiety. I highly recommend that you
Mm-hmm.
find something else. And then I think the biggest misconception about pursuing acting professionally in the industry is that you're going to have this overnight success. You're going to be a hot dog on a stick at the mall, and somebody's going to walk up and go, "It's you, you're the one." That is absolute crap. It is so hard to get into the industry. It takes years. I mean, I've been out here over a decade, and it takes
Okay.
so much dedication. You have to sacrifice leaving town, seeing your family, making money, going on vacation. You
Yep.
have to love it if you're going to really pursue it professionally, because it takes a really, really long time.
Now, talk to me about the dedication because for myself being a music artist, I know the dedication on like a production side, on getting shows together and stuff like that. I know there's a certain lane that we cross between actors and music performers because in a sense when we're performing music, we're sort of like acting. And so or like when we're shooting videos, we're sort of acting for the video. So with the dedication in mind, what are some of the things that you do personally, like when you're prepping yourself for a scene or prepping yourself for a role? What kind of walk me through that type of process that you have to do to get yourself, ready and in the mindset?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. That first of all, the dedication has to be 24/7 before we even
Hmm.
get to a scene, get to an audition, get to being lucky enough to be on set shooting something. My mentor, Pat, taught me to treat it like a sport, which really connected for me because I come from a golf family. Even though I was not athletic whatsoever, it clicked for me to think of like how, your favorite, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, has to do so many free throws at practice. You have to do the
Right.
conditioning, the drills, the weightlifting, the diet. And so for me, it's always like, he always told me from an early age, every single day, do something for your acting. And that can be different per person and per day. For me, sometimes it's,
Hmm.
okay, I ate an extra vegetable. Some days it's I watched a movie. Some days it's I just took a mental health day, whatever it is. When it comes to the dedication for the active acting, you have to treat your body like an instrument. So our job, just like how you would be creating and mixing at home, is to make sure that our
Hmm.
instruments in check. We're mentally, physically, and emotionally taking good care of ourselves, because then when we get a piece of material, you have to be in alignment with yourself. Otherwise, it's just, you can't channel that energy. I kind of describe it like you're loading a gun every time. And if
Hmm.
the bullets are all over the place, or the gunpowder, and you're kind of a mess, or you're too tired, you stayed up late drinking, or you like had a little weed the night before and you can't really, like, that kind of stuff doesn't really, I think, create a successful performer who's in it for the long haul, because it's just, our instrument is our tool. It is our
Yeah.
keyboard or our guitar or our drum. And so I really think that's the biggest part, is staying in alignment with yourself and moving forward in a healthy way. So then when I get a script for Modern Family and you're like shit in the bed because you're so nervous and you have to go to the lot, and you walk through this bunker of a room that's like covered in headshots of famous celebrities, and you're just like,
Hmm.
it's me, I'm here, and you like want to throw up. Everything else is behind you, because if you don't have that stuff stacked up like a good set of bricks, how can you handle that pressure? How can you handle
Yeah.
the stress or the anxiety or the, just that adrenaline that just like overloads you?
Yeah. I know that I've had a couple of those moments. I remember one time we had to, I did a huge, it was kind of like in Michigan, it was our Detroit version of um, kind of like America's Most or America's Got Talent type of thing.
Okay.
And so I remember making it through auditions and making it through finalists. And now we're here in the final I think it was the final five. And so now
Wow.
the final five was this huge show. Now everything else before that had been in like private one-on-one sessions with us and the judges and stuff. And so that's fine. You know, I'm working it. And now we have this big show. This is probably one of my biggest shows that I've done. And so we're in front of this large audience.
Hmm.
And I just completely shit the bed. It was over. I just
Oh no! Oh no!
and it was
Oh.
so and I think in that was like one of those days I learned about like trying to find a place to get into before I go up because
Yeah.
it was so easy for me to just jump in and just
Hmm.
be like, all right, let me grab the mic, let me go, da 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 da. But there was always small pockets of people. I felt
Hmm.
comfortable, and this was
Yeah.
the first time where I peeked behind the curtain. And I'm like, oh, you know.
Oh shit! That's a lot of freaking
So
people.
yeah, and so in that moment, it was just one of those things where just everything overtook me, and I was just like, have and I lost, and so it
Oh,
was
that's
rough.
heartbreaking.
It was rough, and it was such a but it was such a defining moment because, like you say, you realize for everybody it's something different, and you have to find like your zone, what gets you in the
Hmm.
zone and prepped and ready, and even then, not just for the moment, but doing it like the week of, so that your mind is already there. You know, so I think
Right.
that's pretty interesting. Who are some of the people that inspire you, or that people that you really look at when you're seeing film or you're watching television, and you're just like, man, I'm learning from that person every time they're on camera.
Well, I will say that in just a second. I wanted to make a point of what you were talking about, kind of like the preparation. You'll see it a lot
Yeah.
when you're at a, especially a theatrical audition. Commercials are very
Hmm.
social. Everybody's talking. It's not my bag. You know, it's like all the pretty people or all the really quirky people, and they're all in one room. They all look alike, and they're all like, whatever. Not my bag. That's not where I thrive. But theatrical for TV and film, you'll see people completely implode in the waiting room. Um,
Really?
yeah, like you'll see people that they can't stop talking. They're talking to each other constantly because people are nervous, or someone will be pacing the
Mm.
room, running their lines over and over and over again out loud. Well, just think of that. Like you're spending your energy. It's almost like before you prepare for a marathon, you would be doing like jumping jacks. It's like, no, you should be
Yeah.
stretching. You should be drinking water, have a snack.
Yeah.
Don't be like, whoa, you know, and that's what people do because their adrenaline starts shooting out of their eyeballs. And then they get in the room and they're like, because they've kind of like, I hate to say the expression, blown their load because that sounds
Yeah.
gross, but like that's
Yeah.
kind of what they do. It's like,
Yep.
ah, and then they get in, and you're like, oh, sorry, I got nothing left. Do you want to cuddle? Like, no, you know what I'm saying? So I think that like that's kind of a big part of it that you have to learn. That takes time to preserve and hold on to that because even though yeah my auditions I'm not in front of 50,000 people or 5,000 people or 500 people, but I'm in front of
Hmm.
six people who can decide whether or not I'm going to be on a show that will air in front of millions. Like when I did You for Netflix, they had like 47 million views the first week that came out. So
Yep.
you want to talk about like you're doing the audition, then you have to mentally stay in check until you get to the job, and then you're in your trailer and you're like, do I remember how to do this? How do I put on my shoes? Do I
Yes.
smell? They put me in weird Spanx, like all these things that you have to stay calm over. So I agree with you. It is something that takes a lot of practice, and you have to be humble about it because it's going to kick your ass
Yes.
over and over and over again. I've had plenty of opportunities where I've gone in and I've shit the bed, and I'm like, oh, I had three lines and they were seven sentences and I couldn't get them out. Like whatever it was, just and you just leave and you beat yourself up. And I'm better about not doing that because at the beginning I
True.
would literally isolate and eat an entire pumpkin pie. I'm not even
Oh,
joking. It was
yes.
just like,
Yes.
I was so like ashamed, Now it's like, okay, great. Another day, another shot. As far as some of the actors that really inspire me, someone who personally, kind of in a full circle way, is Jennifer Garner. I really admire that she's
Mm.
someone who can be funny, badass, smart, strong, and also have such a beautiful personal life of having a
Hmm.
family, being so philanthropic. That's someone who I really idolize in my own way. I'm like, she's on my vision board over there twice. Um, you know, so I mean, I really love the fact that she's a real actor through and through.
Hmm.
Alan Rickman, who has since passed, is someone that I absolutely
Yeah.
adored watching. I think that Mariska Hargitay, who's on Law and Order, is amazing. I've really enjoyed watching Taraji P. Henson's career. She's
Hmm.
someone who I really, I mean, of course, I'm going to favor more women. I do love me some Tom Hanks and things like that. But I really admire when someone steps into a role and I don't see them anymore. And I'm always very impressed when people are able to kind of bring, we would call that like your emotional life to the table. Because I think the
Yeah.
bravest thing you can do is to be vulnerable on camera. And I enjoy watching how Taraji P. Henson does all of these different variations between hidden figures to Cookie, it's like she just has
Yeah.
such a
Yep.
range. And yeah, so I think it's just about being able to play any color in the box. That's kind of what inspires me.
Yeah. I definitely agree. You list some heavy hitters right there. I know. When I look at people who I just enjoy to watch, and since recently, since July, we've been shooting our mini series Die for This, which has been nerve wracking.
Ooh,
Um, I'm excited. I'm excited. I was just it's so funny. We did a podcast recently, me and one of my actors, and we were just talking about how last year in October we were trying to get this off the ground. And so I told him, like, oh, well, it was perfect because this year, in the middle of a pandemic with the world shut down and nowhere to go, we decided to finally start shooting. So we've been shooting now. I believe it's about 8 episodes,
wow.
and we are.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I've been doing the writing, the directing, the shooting. I do make a cameo appearance in there. I am in there, and
Just be
it's
in the
super
background.
great. I'm like, I see what's happening,
Hey.
um, and it's super cool because for a lot of my friends who are in this, a lot of us haven't had professional acting training. And so a lot of us
Right.
are going off of the spirit and energy off of what we've seen over the years of watching movies.
Sure.
Um, and it's super dope because a lot of us have, I have a friend who she's done no acting. And she's probably like one of my most favorite people in the show because it's a part of her where she's found how to connect with herself in the
Right.
character. And so it becomes so authentic, just her
Hmm.
character. And
Hmm.
so it's so enjoyable. But I love watching and learning from people like James McAvoy in Split. I just
Oh, he's
thought that
so
was
good.
fun.
He's
Thought that
so
was
good.
phenomenal. Um,
Hmm.
of course, the Denzels, the Will Smiths when he
Yeah.
decided to make a good movie. And so
I don't know why that's
I
one once every 6 movies for him. I'm always like, that one? Why? I
why?
mean, I
Why
get
did
it,
you do
paycheck,
that?
but like, aren't you doing okay? Did you really need to do that one where you're your younger self or whatever that one was? Whatever. Continue.
Oh, Gemini Man. Yes,
Yeah.
I was like, the concept is nice. The execution was not that good. Um,
Sorry, Will.
but
We don't approve.
yes, Will, I love you. You're my favorite artist of all time. I would meet you in a heartbeat. Um, and so I guess I've learned a lot um, about acting, about filming, and stuff like that during all of this. When you're on set, and this is one of the things we were talking about in the podcast about how um, three of the characters in my show have such great chemistry.
Hmm.
They're all friends, obviously, but the way they put it together and they show it on film is just so amazing, and it almost makes you want to just keep watching them over and over. Talk to me about that for you when you're on set. Obviously, you're on the Netflix series. What is the chemistry like, and how important is that for you when you're on scene? Because you hear about it in Fast and Furious. Did Vin Diesel don't like The Rock? There's beef over
Right.
here. What
Right.
is that? How important is the chemistry on
I
set, and
I
what does that
personally
do?
yeah, I personally think that that's another skill set you have to have as an actor. Because I
Hmm.
guarantee you that when you show up to set, yeah, there's some stuff that's just absolutely magnetic, right? Like I just finished shooting something earlier this year with my friend Larvell Hood, who's a very talented actor, and we just flow when we're with each other. I can tell you I've worked with other people that are absolute pricks, and you're supposed to be in love with them, or you're supposed to think they're sexy, or you're supposed to be empowered
Yeah.
by them, whatever. And it's not the case. Our job as actors is to kind of rise above that and make it happen anyway. Personally, for me, so that it doesn't feel forced, I'll give you a couple of examples from class. Years ago, I worked with this girl woman, and she was a real bitch. I'm not gonna lie. She was the person that would like make fun of people during their scenes and be like, "Oh, he's sweating." She was like, "This girl," which, as you know me, like that's not my bag. Fun to play that person, but that's who she was in real life. And we had a scene where we played sisters, and I was supposed to be the older sister who was super disappointed. Well, you better believe that I just channeled the fact that I thought she was an absolute C word, and I just like threw it out at her and just like crushed her hard. And so for me, even if it's most of the time for us as professional actors, you're auditioning. Most of your work is in the
Mhm.
audition process. So when you go in and you're matched with somebody in a commercial who's a total dumbass, you have to learn how to kind of cope with that and make it work for you,
Yeah.
because it's people oftentimes when they're new to the industry will kind of victimize and say, well, that person sucks and I'm fabulous. Well, that doesn't really matter. You actually show your strength better by trying to do your best with this performer and
Mm-hmm.
holding your ground, because a lot of times people will be like, oh, this guy's horrible. Well, guess what, no one's going to book you either, because you can't adapt and overcome. Because you'll
Yeah.
see a lot of these shows that are, full of all the pretty people, right? Like the young
Hmm.
CW kind of era of shows. And a lot of them can't act. They're gorgeous, but they cannot act their way out of a cardboard box. Well, what happens when you go up against that guy? You still want the job, right? Yeah, of
Yep.
course. I want to work on the CW, but it's just kind of owning your lane, being true to yourself, and
Yeah.
hoping that that's enough. Because the chemistry is there sometimes, and the chemistry is not. I personally think the best thing you can do is whatever you're feeling about the person, put it through the performance. I can be
Mm.
pleasant as a peach, but think like horrible things in my head that are coming out at you through it. And that's how you professionally manage any imbalances.
Definitely. That's so interesting. And it's again, it goes back to um about music for me as artists when
Mhm.
we're in shows and you see other artists are performing, you have artists in the back and they're just like, that guy, that he really think that song hot. And he's just like, I bet your song better be fire, because if it's not, I'm talking about you. Like, so it's so
Right.
interesting to see that because, uh, I've met artists where they have, put down other artists and,
Mhm.
like they're like, hey, let's do a song, and then I get in the studio with them and I'm like, and you were talking about him,
Right.
like,
It's always like that
what?
though, don't you think? The people that talk the biggest game often are the ones who can't back it up.
Yep, definitely. So I'm learning about um scripts and about I have a friend who the one I was telling about, we did the podcast together
Mhm.
and I gave him this super long monologue and it was a test to kind of see if he could do it and he crushed it. Um have you ever had and he did it in one take. I was super impressed by him. Um and I've learned that actors and actresses will take a script and for some purposes, I'm assuming they want it to be read the way they wrote it. And then
Mhm.
other times, I'm sure they allow for you to take it and then create wiggle room to make it your
Right.
own. Um, which one do you think best fits you? Are you really great at just hitting all the lines for
I would say
verbatim, or
I
do you
think
feel
I feel strong at both, but for me, I am the person who can memorize 9 pages in 45 minutes. That's my brain.
what?
That's like a muscle of mine. I'm very self-deprecating about the fact that you hand me math or science or, you know, a measuring cup and tell me how I can't. Just no, it's just not my brain. Please don't make me do it. I will shit myself on the spot. But for me, the memorization is, I think, one of my strongest assets because usually
Mm,
on set, with the exception of a few here and there, they want you word perfect because the writers take
wow.
their careers just as seriously as we take our careers. So when you show up to Modern Family or one of these big CBS sitcoms, you cannot have one word out of place. You can't add an or an or a huh, and nothing. It is word perfect. Nickelodeon and Disney, you have to be perfect. And it's, I think that is something that takes years of practice, that to learn how to get the words, pages and pages and pages of dialogue. Perfect. Now make it funny. And now make this, make sure that this part has certain
Yeah.
emotion. Now, that's the thing about it that's a lot harder than people think. It's kind of like, doing this at the same time. And I'm sure you feel the
Hmm.
same way. If you can't be a one trick pony in this industry. You can. Some people have made a lot of money doing it, but in
Hmm.
general, you have to be flexible enough to be improvising and bop along. But I would say 9 times out of 10, that's not the case in professional pieces here. They want you word perfect.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is so interesting because my actors when we're doing the show, I'm very laid back with the writing.
Mhm.
So when they change stuff, I'll be like, ah, it's okay, it's all right.
Yeah.
But it's super interesting because I know like one of my actors, he does a lot of ums when he forgets something. He'd be,
Hmm.
you know what, tomorrow night, you're not gonna. You're not going to tell. And I'm like, you forgot the lines, didn't you? He's like, yeah, I'm working through it, you know?
Yeah, we
So
call
it's,
that going up, like when you go up on your lines. And I always tell people
yeah.
it's really good advice in public speaking as well. Take a
Mm,
deep breath instead.
yeah.
So if you're talking and all of a sudden you're losing your train of thought, that sounds a lot better than all of a sudden, yeah, blah blah blah, right? Like everybody does it. We all do it in life.
Yeah.
Like the deep breath substitute is actually just
Hmm.
kind of fills the gap without it being so obvious that you're like on the inside.
Yeah, it's crazy because one of the scenes that he was just doing, I was telling him how in this big choke of writing that I gave him that like you say, I want you to be funny. I want you to be this. And so I'm telling him like there's an arc in energy as you're
Mhm.
talking. So as you start here, I need you to kind of get more angry, more aggressive, then more menacing as you,
Mhm.
go through the line. And so I can see how like while you're trying to remember the lines, you're also trying to remember the energy. Like
Mhm.
how am I delivering this? Which is so crazy. For you, how long do you feel like it takes you? You say 45 minutes. How is that like encompassing everything it takes to go into the script and understanding
No,
it, your
that
character?
can just be memorizing. I spend a lot of time, as much time as I possibly
Hmm.
can, on the material. In today's
Okay.
day and age, really, because everything's digital during COVID, but even last year, uh, really quick turnarounds. Here's 7 pages of dialogue. We need it by 9 a.m. tomorrow, and it's 5 p.m.
Oh,
And you're at home going, holy crap, this is a lot to do. So that's another reason why it's like that muscle, right? You have to keep that
yeah.
muscle taken care of. If you are, not physically taking care of yourself, mentally, emotionally taking
Hmm.
care of yourself, you can't do this job. It is so hard when you're in your best shape in all these
True.
areas. So you really want to give yourself the best chance. But in general, I think that for me, easily several hours on anything that I'm working on, whether it's a three
Okay.
liner or a 3 pager. It is about,
Mm,
because really I look at it like it's like a job interview every time you have an audition. And
true.
you're not going to get that job 9 times out of 10, but you're going to be auditioning for the same casting directors. So you want to show
Hmm.
them respect by showing up, being professional, being word perfect, being
Yeah.
prepared, because you would be so pissed if somebody showed up and wasted your time. And there's so much
Oh,
entitlement in this industry. I know it's in music too, that people just are annoyed. I remember when I did my scene for you, I auditioned for the previous episode and I was pinned, which is when you're in the top two for that job as well. I ran
Okay.
into someone at Starbucks, an actor friend from my groundlings class, and she was with this other guy, and he's like, "Oh man, I auditioned for that show, and it was so ridiculous. I only had one sentence, blah 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 blah." I was like, "Oh yeah, I was pinned for that episode, and I actually booked the next one. Yeah, I get to go to set this summer, and it's going to be amazing, and get to, get paid to make out with James Scully all day." And get a Netflix credit. Pretty damn good. But if I was this entitled prick who thought, oh, it's too
Yeah.
small for me and my ego, they can tell
Yeah.
that when you walk in the room that you're an asshole.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody wants, Julia Roberts level status, but
Yeah.
you have to earn that stuff. And you also have to prove that you can handle each tier of the industry. And those
Mm.
small roles are so important, and that job was so helpful for me in my career because I got to say I've worked on a Netflix show, which is no
Yeah.
joke because it's billions of dollars behind that machine, and when you show up you better be damn good at what you do. But if I was that guy at Starbucks, he was like, nah. It's like, well, good, move back to frickin' Montana or wherever the frick you're from. you know
Exactly. Exactly. And that's so important because like you say, that's a huge show. Not only is it on Netflix, it's one of Netflix's most popular shows because there's a lot on Netflix, but
yeah,
it's one of the shows that is drawing a lot of people.
right,
And whether you have a small role, because even in that role that you play, because love the show I remember when that scene happened, and it's such a vital part to the character
right,
and all the other, because that one moment shows, one of the main characters. It shows his
right,
true nature,
yep,
and so you don't get that bit of him without these side characters here
right,
and their role inside. So that's just as important. And I tell people that because as people have tried to obviously be a part of the production we've been doing, they're like, oh man, what's the role? And I'm like, it's a small role with a few lines, one appearance. And they're like, oh, I was hoping to do something big. Like, that's not everybody. Everybody
right,
can't be the
right,
big fish in the aquarium. So it's so like you say, important that you do take the small roles, or I would say the complimentary roles, and important to make it more meaningful because the main roles need that. They need these complimentary roles to play a part in their story. So I
right.
think it was super dope.
Yeah, when you talk about like your production of things, right? Whether it's what you guys are shooting or the music side
Hmm.
of it, there's thousands of people who work on that show. 1,000
Yeah.
people. So you are, yes, like you said, can be a small part, a complimentary part, but you're right. Like I'm bringing 40's character to light. So you know that this guy's a real creep. He's dangerous.
Yep.
You see him violate this pure bride on her wedding night. But I
Yep.
remember connecting with one of the writers of that episode, and she said, "Thank you
Okay.
for acting out one of my favorite episodes of the season, or yeah, episodes
Mm.
of the season. It was like one of her favorite scenes because
Mm.
they wrote that they wanted to have this element where it exposed 40, but you have my little part got wardrobe involved in having to find a gown for me in 5 different
Hmm.
sizes to see what my boobs would fit into, and hair and makeup, and all the lighting people, and the person who runs, props, who was flying in champagne for me every 3 seconds. And it's a lot of jobs that go into me standing there for 30 seconds looking pretty and doing my
Yes.
thing. Um, and another thing I thought was really amazing is the gentleman who directed our episode was the main editor for all of Gossip Girl. So he has
Mm.
had a different hat that he's worn. Now he's in
True.
directing. And for me, it was such a great experience because I will work with those people again. And the more you can show that you can be a low maintenance, high talented small fish in a big pond, the bigger the fish gets for you. And that's the goal, is that when you're standing in the, at the top as the biggest fish or one of two big fish, you are treated with respect, and you're respecting every single person from where you started to where you are at that moment.
True. Very
That is
true.
my bar, is to be as respectful and professional as possible at all times.
Definitely. Now, what with that in mind, how do you try to inspire other actors? How do what information would you give other actors who are starting off their careers or starting off trying to get into it? Maybe they don't know they because I always, like I say with me, people always say like, "Oh, you're funny or you're this, you should be an actor." But there is a certain element to it that's beyond just being able to be funny or having a character that you can play out. There's a lot that goes into it. So what real advice do you give people? Because I hear people say like, they be humble and stay on top of it. And people are like, okay, I've been doing that. But like you say, you've been doing it for 10 years plus. So what is that real like groundwork advice that you give people who are trying to get into it?
I think you really need to ask yourself, is this the thing that makes me feel the most alive? Personally, I
Mm,
think starting there is a good spot because for me, acting is my spinal cord. It's who I am, it's the air I breathe. I could die tomorrow and go, okay, I have $300, but I chose to follow my dream, my passion. And
mm-hmm,
I think that you really need to ask yourself, what are the reasons that you're in the business to begin with? And I'm not saying this in any way of trying to be condescending. If you were the funniest, best looking, cutest musical person in your high school and you think you're going to go to LA and make it overnight, really consider if you're willing to make those sacrifices. 99% of those people go home within the first year or two. If you are really into it being a career actor, I think the most important thing for you to do is start honing your craft and work
mm-hmm,
on getting better all the time. That's taking lots of different classes. That's trying to learn about script analysis. That's about taking comedy courses. That's about really getting in touch with your emotional life in a dramatic scene study class. I also think the biggest thing that you can do is give yourself a break. I
mm-hmm.
literally thought by 28, this is going to be in the bag, man. I'm going to be Mariska Hargitay #2. 28 sucked. It sucked. That year came and like bitch slapped me into 29. And I was like, fuck that. Damn. Like it stung. And it's like, so really now, I hate to say it's a marathon, not a race. I
Right.
know this is what I'm going to do lifelong. And so I'm in it to win it always. I will never quit. That's the thing I should have led with is don't have a plan B. If this is really what you want to do, don't have a plan
Mm,
B and don't let any mother effer
yeah.
in your family or outside of your family tell you to quit. Because I've had
Mm,
people in my family that are like, oh, she should pack it in. She should come home. I mean, it hasn't worked out for her. It's my life. You don't have a right to tell me what
right.
to do with my life on this planet. As you and I have talked about grief in a previous podcast, it's like, it's your time. And so I think you need to tune out all the critics. I highly recommend getting a
Mm.
therapist, whether you're in the industry or not. It's about
True.
taking care of
Yeah.
your tool, tuning out the bullshit, keeping your head down, and working hard. Those are so many things to say, but that's what I feel. I don't think somebody's going to say, give it time, it's going to work out. No, it's fucking ruthless. And I cannot
Yeah.
tell you an example that I will share is that I have gotten so close in so many jobs. You think you're about to get it. I auditioned for this like redneck girl, James Vanderbeek's girlfriend on Modern Family, and she's just classless. And I brought a Slurpee from 7-Eleven with me, right? I stuck the straw
Okay.
in my mouth. I did the whole audition like this, whatever. I didn't get the job. Well, I saw the shoot. I saw it come out on TV. They
Mm-hmm.
literally chose a woman who looked almost exactly like me in a cat shirt like I wore with a Slurpee with a red straw in her mouth, who was like 10 years older, who was more age appropriate for James Vanderbeek. And I'm like staring at my TV like, oh, not only did I almost get that part, you took my bit. What the fuck? You know? But
What?
you know what? That's a huge compliment because I think everyone in Modern
Yeah.
Family is brilliant. And that means I did a good job. Did I book that job? Absolutely not. Um, so you have to be willing to celebrate the micro wins along the way in this business.
Yeah.
If you're waiting for a fucking series or an Oscar once a year to come by, this is not the business for you.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than that. It's 99% no, but for me, I love it. I would do nothing else with
Yeah.
my life. So for me, the nose is like cocaine, which I've never done. But it's like that. All right, it's just like fuel to the fire. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's like, fuck yeah, let's
Yeah.
go. And so if that's how you feel about it, in any area of your life, do that thing. But if you don't feel like as lit up as I do about it, then find something else because there are a lot more easy ways to make money and buy a car. Not this.
That's true. That is so true. And I love what you're saying because I do so much, right? I'm doing YouTube. I'm doing,
Yeah.
a Patreon. I'm creating content. I'm doing interviews. I'm doing all type of other stuff. I'm doing music. I'm shooting a movie. But people will always ask, right? They say the, classic line for YouTubers, like, oh, how many subscribers you got? I'd be like 95 and I'm happy. Like that's
Yeah.
95 people that love what I do and they keep coming back. And if I
Yeah.
get, 20 views or 10 views, that means that something that was up here that I brought here, 10 people watched it. That's amazing. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I love it. And you have to I always am under the belief that no matter what it is that I'm doing, I could go do this for the rest of my life and not make a dollar because I love it that much. It's like
Right.
DNA. It's
Yep.
just in my fabric. I can't change myself like a chameleon. I just am this. This is my
Right.
identity. And so
I get
it's
it.
so great because so many people go into thinking about acting and they think about the glorious life. They think about the red carpets. They think about
Mhm.
this and they don't see the practical side of it, like how long it takes, and being like you say, celebrating the micro wins or just the wins in general. Some people would be like,
Right.
"Oh, you were on you, but you only had like a 30-second scene." You're like, "I
I
was on you."
but Vince, I've had people in my own life who were friends who said that, yeah, it was a lot shorter than I thought. And I'm like, do you have an agent? No. Do you have a manager? No. Have you ever worked on a television show? No. Have you ever had a speaking part? No. Then sit down. And that's kind of the thing that you have to be willing to tune the
Yeah.
haters out. It's like I saw some great quote that said something like, "Don't let those who've let their dreams die kill yours." And nothing
Mm-hmm.
like bringing the haters out than someone who believes in themselves and is taking a risk. This girl, I saw her thing on Instagram. It was so funny. It said about followers or whatever, subscribers.
Yeah.
She said, I only have 30 followers or 30 likes on this, but if 30 people walk by and were interested in what I was doing, I'd be feeling pretty good about myself. And I think you and I are similar that way, that it's not about the followers, because there is a part of it, there's a market for that in all arenas. But at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, you got to be able to actually produce. And it
True.
may take me a lot longer to get in the room because I don't have 100,000 followers. But once I get in that room, I'm not going to get kicked back out and say, oh, damn,
True.
yeah, this was all hot air and cotton candy. And I'm not trying to
Yeah.
like hate on anybody. Everyone has their lane. You do you. But I think you're doing the right thing by throwing the net so wide, and you should be really proud of yourself for that.
I am. Thank you. I love. There's a joy in the process. I follow Gary
Mhm.
Vee a lot. And
Yeah.
Gary Vee he just speaks so much to me every time he drops a video. But there's a love for the process, and if you don't love the
Mhm.
process, 10 years down the line, now you're bored and you don't love it anymore. And because people think about the on screen for acting, they think about, oh, I want to be on the screen in the movies, but they don't think about all the stuff you said, the 7 hours studying and the
How do you
45
pay your
minutes practice.
bills?
How do you pay the
How do you
bills?
how do you
Working.
pay your bills? How do you pay your Screen Actors Guild dues? How do you pay for a $300 to $500 a month acting class? How do you afford to go home and see your family if you want to? Where do you
Yeah.
live? How can you? It's no joke, and it's something that I've not traveled anywhere in my entire 20s because I have been in LA. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready because I know at some point
Yep.
that wheel's going to come around. They're going to be like, "You're still here? Cool, let's go." And I do think that's
Yep.
something else that I encourage people, that you and I've talked a lot about it, because obviously we've talked about your friend Carl, talked about my dad who passed away at 51. There's something really wonderful also about getting older. When I first got to LA at 18, everybody was like, "Oh, you got an expiration date of 5 years." Well, I was already 30 looking when I was 18. So now I'm 31.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I actually feel pretty fucking good about where I am right now, because there's a
Yeah.
lot less people in my bracket because everybody's having babies and going home, which, Godspeed. I'm just like, come on, ovaries, not yet. Let's just get on a series. Let's pull in Ellen Pompeo, and then they'll put like a cart in front of us in the fake hospital. It'll be good. Like we can feed you
Yeah.
too. Because like that's just not where I am right now. But
Right.
it's that feeling of like betting on yourself, making sure that you
Yeah.
are giving yourself the time is, I think, important.
Hmm. Very, Very, very true. I think that's one of the biggest things I tell people. Bet on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because when I remember when I first lost my job some years ago, and I was sitting there like, oh, what am I going to do? And I told myself like, I'm gonna bet on myself right now. Now I'm gonna bet. Perfect time to bet on yourself. And I remember people being like, so are you gonna go back to work? And I'm like, I'm betting on myself right now. And they're like, that doesn't seem smart for someone like because there are so many things like you say that you have to put into it, and
Mm-hmm.
people won't understand your vision, and that's why it's so great that it's your vision, because
Right.
only you can see it and no one else has to see it. I think about even just in the Bible when you talk about Noah, right? When Noah built the
Mm-hmm.
ark, the great
Mm-hmm.
story we hear, people are looking at him, he was
He's
crazy. What are you
crazy.
building a boat for, sir? And he's just UFC, and they're like, this guy building a boat, idiot. And then it floods and people are like,
Yeah.
please let me on the boat. Like, he's
No
like,
kidding.
I told you, so
It's funny.
it's so crazy.
I feel a little bit bitter. I've had friends be like, Laura, don't do that. That's not God's way. Be forgiving. And I'm like, you better believe I have a list of every person who's ever like talked shit or been like, she needs to come home. Who does she think she is? By the way, I'm really not that. I mean, I have evolved in a lot of ways, but like, I still watch Gilmore Girls and go to Trader Joe's. I'm not this monster who's like in LA. That's a
Woo,
spirit
Gilmore
possession.
Girls.
But this list is like very long. And like, there's gonna be a
Very,
day when I'm gonna have hundreds of thousands of dollars an episode, and somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, can we come to set? Oh, Laura, actually, can we bring our grandchild?" And I'm gonna be like, "No, no,
no,
no."
no,
I was like, "No, Laura, you need to rise above it." And I'm like, "No, I
no, I don't.
this." My therapist would say that this is a boundary being set. No,
Yeah,
and then it'll just be fun because the people who have been supportive, I can bring along and who will appreciate it and have been there during the struggle, because you really also need to be aware of that when you do start getting successful. And when I'm sure it's in any field. Like when I first booked my Nickelodeon series, I started hearing
hmm,
from people who would not even go meet me for coffee when I was in my early 20s, because they're like, who cares about her, she's new, blah blah blah. Well, once I got on a series and was on TV every week for a whole summer, then everybody was like,
uh-huh.
"Hey, you want to go out for lunch?" And I'm just like, writing your name
Nah,
down on the list. This bitch came back around back, and it's welcome, people. And gotta, you gotta. Oh, you there?
yeah, I'm back.
I saw your face go, huh? Where'd I go? But I think it's just about not ever acting like you're above anybody else. It's just kind of staying in your own lane and worrying about your one side of the yard. You don't have to be worrying about everybody else's opinion. I think creatives
That's
are
it.
so sensitive. We do take it very personally. I'm a very sensitive
Right.
person. Like somebody at Ralph's is having a bad day and I'm like, I can tell, And so I won't lie,
Mm-hmm.
like things hurt my feelings, but I'm trying to just let that stuff go and go, that's their path, this is my path, and I'm going to own my path, because at the end of the
Yeah,
day, that's all I'm taking with me is what I did on my own in my lane.
that's so true. That's so true. I'm gonna ask you one. We'll talk about one thing, and then I'll let you go because I enjoy talking with you,
I know
Laura. It's
you and I
been
could sit
so
here all day.
long.
We'd be like two peas in a pod, I swear.
Two peas in a pot. So I must admit I have fallen deeply in love with your random videos
Ah,
of
yeah.
you and Charlotte
Ah,
and the hub. I love it. You guys are like just the modern family. I
that's so
love it.
sweet.
Like, and I just think it's so cool. Like I feel like you've taken your ability to act and you've almost demo reeled yourself through your Instagram,
Thank
and it's
you.
super cool to see it. Even barring injuries that happen in the middle of these skits that
My
you do.
God. Yeah. And what's ironic is what you're talking about is I had an audition where I had to do a pratfall. So I had a fake fall. So I did
Okay,
that. I like throw myself out and I trip coming in the door and I land on Charlotte's dog bed. It's all choreographed. And later that day, I went to Taekwondo and did a roundhouse kick and tore my calf in two different places and ended up at the hospital like 4 hours later. And then I post on my Instagram that like I'm in this huge fiberglass cast. Everybody's like, was that from that self tape? And I'm like, no, that was stunt. That was like a stunt that I did well. And then I just lived my regular life and I fucked my leg up. So yeah, I'm like 3 months post calf tear, still doing physical therapy where they want me to spell the alphabet with my foot. So stupid. Yeah, so at least I did something badass. But yeah, I appreciate you noticing the reels thing. And I'll be honest with you, because we're friends. I can be transparent, and this is for anybody out there. I really realized during COVID, during this year, that for various reasons of like feeling shame, feeling insecure, being depressed, I have been kind of hiding. And I had a therapist, my current therapist, who's wonderful, told me that, you can't wait for everything to be perfectly lined up before you shoot the arrow. You kind of have to do it all at the same time. So I realized like I need to start putting myself out there more. So I shut down my side
Hmm.
hustle. I closed down my grief podcast, My Condolences, which is still up for everybody, but I like paused that. I'm like, no, let's exclusively bet on Laura the actress, because that's who I am. I keep saying, oh, I'm this and I do that and I do this. For me, acting is it. It always has been, it always will be. And so
Yeah,
I'm committing almost as like exposure work to be like, I'm going to put myself out there as much as I can and not worry about if anybody else likes it or doesn't like it. People have dropped off. I'm like, oh, my followers went down a little bit, but I had like 10,000 new
yeah,
engagements. And so you're like, okay, you have to bet on yourself. You have to be brave. And I think 2020 has taught us that we're so out of control. Life is so unpredictable. So you might as well do
yeah.
something that really makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to do the coulda, woulda, shoulda, you know?
So true. So true. And I think that is one of the things when I'm scrolling through my Instagrams and I'm seeing all of my creative friends doing things, and it inspires me. Like even today, I finally decided I'm gonna get on TikTok and become a part of this TikTok world. And I have loathed TikTok for so long.
I
I
get it.
was
I
like,
did it too.
I'm not doing this. This is for these kids who do dance videos and they just make the dumbest video. And I'm not going to engage in this. There's nothing there for me. I
Right.
am a higher creative. I
Right.
make videos. And so, but again, just learning like you just take a chance on something. You jump out there and you expose yourself to it. And even with me shooting the miniseries, again, it was something where I did myself want to wait till I had the perfect camera,
I get
till
it.
I had
I know.
the studio
Yep.
set built,
Yep.
And I remember watching Gary Vee again. He always gets me in trouble, and he's like, "You gotta go do it."
Yep.
And so, I remember seeing a video where they're like, "You can shoot movies on your iPhone," and I was like,
Huh?
"What?"
Yeah.
So I mean, instantly, and then we started there, and from there we've just been going and going and going, and so it's super dope when you just never know the life you would take upon once you start something up. You never just see where it's going to go, but you got to start it. You
Yeah.
have to at least get out there and get a feel for it. And so now here we are, 6 months in, six and a half, 7 episodes later, and like all these actors that I'm working with now, they're so excited. They're anticipation is through the roof. People are liking the videos that we're posting. And it's now coming in like, man, what if I wouldn't have took that step 6 months ago and been like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not even a producer, director yet. No one knows
What does
me.
that
I
even
haven't.
mean? Because to be honest with you, some of the ones that have those titles in LA are so goddamn pretentious. I met this guy a couple months ago, and I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm very blunt. I'll call it like it is. And he's
I
like,
love
well,
it.
I like actors that are up to things. And I'm like, pardon my crass hand gesture. It's like, bitch, we are all trying to stay above water, and you're going to tell me that I haven't done enough. It's like, get out of here. You just got to do what makes you happy. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
perfect. It doesn't have to be. I mean, yeah, when you get to the level when you're World Series pressure where you have to like make or break on a job, you get there.
Hmm.
But that's a huge line between
True.
I want to be creative and express myself and I'm at the door of CBS. So you might as well jump on it and learn. I think Lisa Nichols talks a lot about this that I think is so true. It's like you never know who's watching. And you
True.
think that you're like, you can think like, oh, people are watching it. No, you're inspiring people. Um,
True.
the best thing you can do after talking to lots of therapists is like focus on yourself, take good care of yourself. It's that put your
Yep.
mask on yourself before helping others kind of mentality, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not being true to ourselves, then who do people go to when they need help in that area? We talk about money,
Right.
right? Like I have very little money and I want to be able to provide for my family. Well, if I sit and slum it and feel bad for myself and go, oh, I'm poor, I'm never going to be able to help my family. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
just keep, moving the meter a little bit at a time. And that does come from being courageous. That does come from, personally for me, I don't think what I do is reckless at all. I'm actually very
Mm.
responsible and committed and passionate and driven and focused.
True.
And so even if you're not working at Wells Fargo, that doesn't mean that you're being irresponsible with your life. It just means you're taking the road that's going to be more treacherous. But my hope for you and I both, and anyone who is as committed as we are to our craft, is that, man, I hope you get to the end and you get to like blow it up the rock style and be like, we're going on the boat. We have the truck for our mom. We get to have cheat meals on Sundays, in our
Right.
at-home gym. Like, that to me is the dream. Like, God, if all I could do every day is just focus on my craft and not have to worry about money, I would be the happiest motherfucker on earth. And that's what I'm working toward. That's what I'm working towards. It's like
Yeah.
I'm sacrificing
Yeah.
everything to then be able to line those up so I can provide for the family that I have. And if and when I have my own child, I can say, look what mommy did. And I know you're
Yeah.
doing that. You're setting an amazing example for Kobe, because children are watching their parents always.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And I think, and the beauty of it is that even, let's just say nothing works out.
Hmm.
We don't get the Golden Globe. I don't get that platinum record. Like whatever. The beauty is that somebody died never knowing what they could do, and I died knowing what I could do.
Hmm.
And it was just like with music. I told somebody a year ago, and I told somebody recently that a year ago, my music journey, I realized, was very one way, like one dimensional, selfish in a sense, where I was like, I want to blow up, I want the platinum record, and blah blah blah. And now I look at my music as, if I never blow up, what music can I write that will inspire or encourage my daughter to do better with her life or to go after something?
Hmm.
Can I write a heartbreak song that when she goes through her first breakup, she knows she can listen to this? When I'm dead and gone, there are people, our parents passed and stuff, and we were like, man, I wish I could hear their voice again. You have the picture, but then you almost forget that the
Yeah.
voice and I'm like, at least I know that if I leave, that she'll be able to hear my voice. If I leave, she'll be able to read something and know where my mind was. If she looks back at this video, she'll say, wow, he knew Laura from You, who had that great scene with 40, which made dad cringe because he was like, no, 40, don't do it. Like, she'll be able to look back and see that I lived. And that's the great thing about what we do as creatives, is that we get to leave behind the fact we lived. You know what I'm saying? And because
Absolutely.
people get older, they work jobs, that's it. They die, they go. And you don't really know what they did to know that they lived besides working for someone else or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's the fact that you can find a piece of legacy to hold on to and then share that and leave it there for somebody, the grandkid, the great grandkid, to come and say, wow, she spent all this time acting and all the, let's go back to her Instagram. Look at all these videos. This one she fell, but did you know she didn't break the knee on it? It was actually like, we get to show people we lived. Just alone that makes our journey worth it. So when you die and people are like, well, you never made $1 million. Are you happy with your life? Do you feel like it was worth it? It's like, yeah, because
Yeah.
it makes me. Go ahead, go
And
ahead.
and I think if your purpose is something bigger than fame and money,
Yeah,
it does matter. And you
yeah.
can put your head down at the end of the night and go out whenever you're meant to go out and go, yeah, I did me and I did it authentically and I honored myself and my
Mm-hmm.
family. And I think that that's the difference. I think when you're out here long enough, you see a lot of the pretentious fake people that give actors bad names. But there
Yep.
are a lot of us out here who feel defined by this work, and that
Mm-hmm.
makes us feel the most alive. I know we talked in my grief podcast, like acting for me is the way I express myself through my grief. When I have a hard
Yeah.
scene, when I have emotions, I can honor my dad through those pieces. And
Mm.
that's so much more than wanting to be on the cover of People magazine. Maybe when I was 18, I was like, that would be awesome. And now I'm
Yeah.
like, honey, I could give a rat's ass. It might be cool because then I could walk by all the jerks in my hometown and be like, hey, hey. But in general, like that can't be what it's about, or you won't
Yeah.
survive. It has to be for something bigger, higher purpose, higher power. And I think that's why you and I connected so much, because we have the same view on that.
Definitely. Laura, I appreciate you so much for doing this. You are what I appreciate more about this is that, and it goes back to what you were saying all the way at the beginning about just who you are, is you can easily be like, I've acted on You for Netflix. I've done things for the Modern Family. I'm an LA actress. And yet you still take the time to be with me on, because I feel like you are feeding into my journey. This is me doing a podcast live where I'm meeting with different creatives. One, to expose people to you, to expose people to great people like you, and to make people say, I need to see what she's about. But also, it's you saying that I'm not too proud to be, here for you as well, and now give
Absolutely.
me the platform back. So I love you so much
I love
for
you
just
too.
being so willing. If I could ask you one last question before we leave,
Yes, sir.
I think it's so dynamic, the things that you've posted during such a crazy time like 2020, and such a crazy time with our country, with the racial wars that we've seen. Just the climate of human interaction has just been bananas. And
Hmm.
I think it's so amazing to see you as a Caucasian white female
Hmm.
from California, where people have such a stereotype about women from California or white women from California. I think you have set such a great example, such a great
Oh,
standard for someone who is supporting injustice for those of colored or different ethnic backgrounds. And I love what I've seen you post. I love what I've seen you say. I love the insults that you throw at them people. Keep throwing them insults. I love it.
well,
How has it been for you? You've seen everything going on. What has that been like you to see this? Because in one sense, you do see what's happening to other people, but then on the other side, you see people who look like you, who have the different mindset, throwing this at other people who don't look like you. And I'm sure that people who see you have a mindset where they think you're one of them. But
yeah,
you get to see both sides as someone who's not with them, who's for them but not them. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
what has that been like?
It's
Because I
funny.
think what you've done is amazing.
Well, that's very sweet. I mean, I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I grew up in the South. I grew up in a racially charged environment where,
Hmm.
you know, uh, to be frank, a lot of the people I knew were like, "Oh, he's black. Well, it's only cool if he's like Darius Rucker or Shaquille O'Neal or Tiger Woods. But if he's just the guy in the street, you know."
Wow.
That's where I grew up, and I actually had something happen this year where my uncle has blocked me on Facebook because I spoke out about Black Lives Matter and all of these things. And it's
Wow.
like, do I need to have that guy around? I mean, family doesn't really matter. I personally think that a gift of moving from Florida to California at 18 was that I was exposed to so many more different people, different
True.
ethnicities, different sexual orientations, different religions. And when you're in your own little hometown, even if whatever your identity is, you can be stuck in that identity with who you're
Yep.
around. And I think that I have a lot of beautiful black people in my life that I love. And I've always wanted to speak out for them, but really watching everything break down in 2020 and asking and talking to them about it really illuminated to me that you guys have experienced this stuff every single day of your life.
Hmm.
And as white people, I can only speak from my prism. It's like a very sheltered, backwards view of what we know. Like I was
Hmm.
raised like, oh, people are getting scholarships because they're black, and good luck getting a scholarship. All the black kids are going to get it. And then as you get older, you realize, well, they were oppressed, so they didn't have the opportunity to get in or to financially gain enough to pay for the school. That's not what I was taught. Our school
Hmm.
books in the South are so different, and so I felt
Wow.
very responsible. Um, Not only to be an ally and not in a white savior way. That for me is the big line. I'm like, you guys are fine. You've been doing you for a long time. You don't need me to be like, it's all in me. I got it. Not at all.
Yeah.
It's more that I need to say, no, you need to step back and look at it from their perspective. You need to see how
Hmm.
this is going. I have two friends, one of whom I love dearly, who is a black male. And I'm like, do you not realize that he's scared to go out at night? Do you know that his wife, who, yes, is white, has to deal with her children being interracial and having these fears? You know, they go, oh, well, they're great. Yeah, but they are wonderful people. Well, we have to start having more conversations about this. I personally feel as white people, it's our responsibility to have those uncomfortable conversations. They're actually getting a lot less uncomfortable. I've got no problem talking about it now. But at the beginning, it was awkward as fuck. It was like, well, shit, what do we do? How can we help? And then like putting
Yeah.
things on Facebook and saying like this isn't the time to be neutral. It's the time to be, you know, anti-racist,
Yeah.
anti-white supremacy. You have to get up to bat. And I feel good about that. I have this great sweatshirt that I have, and it's like rainbow, and it talks about like love is love, and Black Lives Matter, and science is real. And I wouldn't have worn that when I was 18 because I would have been so scared about my society that I was in. Now I'm
Mm.
like, no, this needs to be the new normal. It's our responsibility. I feel like I have evolved a lot, even from several years ago when the industry was diversifying after Oscars So White. That I remember being like, I'm not getting any auditions. What's happening? This is awful. And my good friend Ash said to me, this must be really hard for you because you've never been oppressed before. And I was
Mm.
like, oh shit, that's so true. And I'm a dick because to me, it was like, that's the worst thing that I could think of. I wasn't getting
Yeah.
auditions, not realizing that there were opportunities that she was missing out on as a black woman. And if she hadn't been vulnerable enough to share that with me, if I hadn't been vulnerable enough to hear her and not get defensive and get all
Mm.
pissy about it, we wouldn't be years later. So moving in through the Black Lives Matter movement and being able to have these conversations, because I think you and I know this, that at the end of the day, you and I are literally two peas in a pod. When we met randomly through Instagram, it was like souls recognizing each other.
Yeah.
But if you looked at it on paper and you're a black man from Detroit and I'm a
Right.
Southern Floridian actress who lives in LA, you would not think that we would be friends. And that's the thing I think
True.
people need to buck up, have the courage to have the conversations, have the kindness and the necessity to step up for our friends who are of color, who have different sexual orientations, and say something. Because if we don't do that on our side of the table, the needle's not going to move. And people need to, I think, understand the difference between not victimizing black people, not victimizing white people, but working as a team. But unfortunately,
Hmm.
we need to do a little more on our side of the table, and people need to stop being so defensive about that. It doesn't have to be we think they're better or we're better. It's just let's all work together. So that's just
True.
something that I'm trying to, you know, I'm not even trying. I am just being outwardly outspoken about, because fuck that shit. Stop being cowards about it. It's 2021 almost, you know.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. I love it. I try to make it as simple as possible to white friends or white people
Mhm,
that I come across, and I say if we can cheer and hug and celebrate when Kobe Bryant makes a big three in a game winner, and then we can cry together when we get put out of the finals 3-1 and we just lost so terribly, then we can love each other.
yeah.
Because there's no difference between you and I in that moment when we celebrate a big shot
Mhm,
or we cry after a big loss. If we and that's what I thought was so amazing, even in Kobe's passing out in California. You just saw the sea of people
mhm,
of all nationalities, all coming together to mourn and to be with each other, to console and comfort each other.
mhm,
And I thought that that was so beautiful because that's what we can do as a people,
mhm.
as
And
is
it's
just
just
love each
exposure.
other.
It's exposure. It's people starting to normalize being around people who are not like them.
Yep.
Because when you do that, you realize, oh, actually, we've got this in common. We both love this show. We both love this band. We both enjoy this food. But people don't think about it that way. They look at it like, a black person is a representation of fear or danger or whatever. But that's one view. And so I think that people have to push themselves both
Mm-hmm.
ways to start having those conversations and say, hey, I see you. And just guess what? I
True.
really, and I hate to say this because I know it discredits like people of color, and I'm not trying to say that. I just judge people whether they're an asshole or not. The rest of it doesn't matter, but I'm realizing it actually does matter, and I have to speak up for that as well. But at my core,
Mm.
if you're an asshole, and you're on my little list for it. So
You're on the list.
on the
You've
list,
made the list.
you've made the list.
Definitely.
They're like, yay! I'm like, that's not good for you. You're on the shit list. Sorry.
Oh, well, I am so grateful, guys, that you have had this opportunity to meet Laura. She is phenomenal. If you don't follow her already, you need to go follow her right now. Okay? Just go. We'll wait. We'll wait.
It's
We don't do that.
it's Laura Harman, Harman.
Go ahead and do that. Yeah. But listen, guys, if this is we're going to be going live, obviously, a lot where I meet with creators, but these videos after they are done are going to be exclusively on the Patreon. So if you are not a Patreon, I don't know what your problem is. I don't know what you're doing with yourself. It only costs you two hot and readies, which is $10. So no butter and parm, because then you're at $12.50, and we're not charging that much. We're just charging the $10. So the Patreon, you can definitely join today. You can go ahead and download the Patreon app, search Maturity Productions, or click the link in my bio. It's that easy. Laura, thank you so much. I love you. We are like far away spirit animals. You
True.
just the two peas in a pod. You have been amazing. I definitely cannot wait to see if you ever continue the podcast, because I think
Thank you.
you tell some of the most amazing stories with some of the most amazing, transparent, brave people. And I love it. And you guys stay safe out there. You guys stay clean out there. Give all the middle fingers to all the assholes out there, you know.
Yep.
And I wish nothing but the most success for you, Laura. I will watch you episode. What episode was that?
Season 2, episode 8.
I will watch season 2, episode 8, 40 times for Netflix to realize there's something about this episode
Just watch
that
that
people
one
keep
45
watching.
seconds. Just like rewind,
Just
rewind,
that.
rewind, rewind.
Just that. And they'd be like, somebody keeps watching just this 45 seconds. What is happening here?
Yep.
So, thank you, Laura. You take care. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for
We'll talk
having me.
soon.
Yeah, for sure. Tell the girls they said hi.
I will. Thank you.
Bye.